We all know the popular saying, experience is the best teacher. But you can never stop learning from others' experience. My name is Anointed, and welcome to Tech Founder Stories, where founders tell their stories.
So my name is Eliezer Ajah. I'm usually called Ezra. Initially, I started at Genesis Tech Hub in different departments. So the point where I got to head of talent development and outsourcing, which was when I now decided to start Hub E as an offshoot of what we did at Genesis in terms of outsourcing talents that we had trained so that they can get jobs. And then, I was able to scale it and ramp it up by a couple of partnerships so that ultimately we were able to provide talents, particularly in Enugu, because Enugu has the highest concentration of tertiary institutions to now do the work. So that's basically who I am. I think that before people start anything business-wise, it's always important to go through, I like to call it first principles, which is to understand what tech is before you decide where to settle. Back in the day, I was an advocate of people working in banks, because if you work in a bank first, you learn how to dress corporately, you learn how to talk to clients, you learn how to manage money, you learn how to work in a particular system that works. So that when you now eventually go out and start something on your own, that order is still there. It's simply like people writing code, strongly typed and non-strongly typed. If you start learning code with Java, it's strongly typed. So even when you start doing the var of JavaScript, because you started in the confines of a system that worked, you're able to transfer it. So initially, I started in social media. Before, while I was in college, I used to write code, I used to write Java, but then it was so not me, because I generally have always excelled when I interacted with people. So talking with people has always been my forte. So I was writing code in school, up to the point I wrote my project. I implemented genetic algorithms to solve examination timetabling problem. But immediately after my project, I was like, this is not really what I want to do the rest of my life. I don't want to be in a back-facing role. As ideally, I wanted to do something that would interact with people. So what happened was that I joined Genesis in 2018, and I was handling social media. That was the first job I had. It was interesting because I had done nothing at all in the social media space. In fact, my Twitter account was dormant until the year before, in 2017. So, but I just decided, all right, whatever I was going to do as a person, in case this was my account, that's the same way I was going to tweet from Genesis's page. And so I just brought that infusion of life, of excitement into it, and then it started. But at some point, I felt that I had maxed out my potential, social media-wise, because I started in social media. I was there for like 2 years. And then one day I was just walking, and my boss, Namdi Anika, mentioned, oh, there's this certification training happening in Abuja. It's called ICDL. I know I'm a very brilliant person, so I just said exam. I'm going to pass it. I don't even need to know what you're talking about. I did not know what the exam was going to be. I just felt, is it not an exam? Well, 2 days later, I was on a flight to Abuja to go and write this education exam, which obviously I passed. And then that started my journey in learning and development, which is currently what I do core. So I did training because I wrote the certification exam. I traveled around Nigeria, training lecturers in universities. I went back to my alma mater, which is Funai, in Ebonyi, to train the lecturers there in ICT. And it was very fun, it was very fulfilling. After I'd done training, I now moved into learning and development as a concept, not just the training aspect. So I had to now do things around organizational learning and development to ensure that everybody in the organization was growing. I started running learning programs. That was when I ran Learnable by Genesis Tech Hub. I did that for a bit before I now went out from that mode to now start running Hubly as a talent outsourcing company. So that's basically what my journey has been so far, career-wise. Yeah, so one of the things I've always spoken against is solutionism, basically where you bring a solution and then you start looking for a problem it's solving. So I'd always prefer if you go topwise, like from a problem to a solution. And that's what I advise every founder to do, because ultimately you need to solve something. So we noticed that at Genesis that we are churning a lot of people from our learning programs. These people were getting jobs at Google, at Microsoft, but we didn't have any direct path in what they were doing. And then we kept on getting requests from banks if we'd go to meet them for like general stuff. they're like, oh, we can't do this, but people are leaving the team. So we need people to take up, these roles. And basically was that there was a global talent shortage generally. And we now started locally in Nigeria with banks, to work with institutions. Even in Enugu, we did some work with Zen, with Ycrypt, Lagos, we did Stanbic, Abuja, we did Signature Bank and a couple of other banks. And basically, people were leaving the country. People that had jobs in tech were leaving, and they needed people to take these jobs. So there was a major problem. And we had a lot of people that had the talent. Like I said, Enugu has the highest concentration of tertiary institutions, which means that about 15 tertiary institutions are in Enugu, which means that you have people that can speak English, who are young, who are also hungry and willing to get knowledge and earn. So because of that, that's why we now decided, let's bridge that gap. And so we started locally. We started in Enugu, moved to Lagos, to Abuja, and currently we also do a couple of things with Germany, the United States, and the UK, where, because Nigerians, we can speak English, we can speak very good English, and most times they just want somebody that can speak English and that can do stuff well, and that's what we're able to now establish. So that's why we started, because we saw that there was a need for qualified talent locally and eventually internationally, and we had a partnership with Genesis Tech Hub Foundation that had a lot of qualified talent. So that's why it just made sense to be that intermediary between the demand for talent and then the supply that we have. People that are around you, people that generally push you, your family, your friends, and all of that. So, but for me, it was a little bit different, because something like talent outsourcing, the model I've always liked to run in terms of business is lean as possible. So I don't hire any extra person if it's not something that the people on the team cannot do, okay? I don't need to get an office. To be fair, I had the support of Genesis as an early sponsor. But yeah, my family was great, people around us, because it was conversations from people around us, like Namu, Ekene, and the rest of them, that now made us think, oh, this is something you're supposed to do. And they were there to encourage you, especially when you have tons and tons of meetings, you're traveling. In fact, there was this period that I was on, I think, 13 different flights in less than 3 weeks, from 2 hours to up to 14 hours, just because, you were trying to do stuff. So if you didn't have a proper support system around you, definitely you'd flounder. So yeah, my support system, my family, my friends were a major reason that sustained and have continued to sustain me outside that. I think one of the major challenges one would encounter is even standardization, in the sense that I had not gone to any school where they had taught me this is how you're supposed to run a business. In fact, a lot of the things I knew were because of some of the things that Genesis Tech Hub had already implemented in their curriculum, in the learning programs that they did around the learnable business sessions and stuff I'd read. But I didn't have that support in terms of knowledge. A lot of the things I did, I was learning on the job, okay? I was trying to figure it out as it went on. And then one of the major issues was that I didn't have enough supply, enough demand to meet my supply. So I had to now start leveraging on connections, going to events where I could meet potential people and tell them, oh, this is what I did, trying to network to bigger people. In fact, sometimes some of the meetings I had while I was in the United States was even around acting as a sourcing partner to other people in the space, because I had a smaller margin. I was like, okay, use me as your sourcing partner so that you can complete the numbers and you can take your cuts while I do the job behind the scenes. It was a major problem in terms of also corporate governance, because there's a way a system should be run, there's a way it should be done properly. So I didn't have that knowledge, so there was a knowledge gap. So that's why immediately I started. After a while, I decided, oh, I need to go back to understand this thing, running a business properly, managing people properly, so that I'm able to give back value. So there was that knowledge side at the first part. Then the second part was, access. Access is a major problem, because a lot of what you do revolves around access. If you had access to the president, you'll be able to sell stuff to the president. But if you don't have access to the president, it stays here. A lot of that was happening because I couldn't just walk into the headquarters of Access Bank Lagos to say, oh, I have talent to outsource to you. I'm based in Enugu, who do I even know? So I was now able to walk around that by establishing meaningful partners, thanks to my sponsors and major investors. When you look for people that are going to support your business, there's also something outside finances that they can offer. It could be connections, it could be meetings, it could be access, all of that stuff. Also have, if not a higher value than cash, but very similar values. So these people were able to now get me into rooms I needed to get into, try to get conversations going, etc., etc. So that enabled me to be able to like see things from a proactive perspective. So I think those were like the early challenges. And then the fact that I had to do everything myself. I was sending invoices with my invoice email. I was sending receipts. I was confirming with the bank that payments I've gotten in. I was sending legal contracts. I was on my Excel sheets. I was doing interviews. I was recruiting. It was just me because I could not justify hiring more people. Where would I get the money from? What was I, doing at that point? So I think those are like the really, really early challenges that I faced. A couple of them I'm still facing, but the journey of starting something or doing anything, especially in a country like Nigeria, there's a lot of angst, there's a lot of problems, and you just try to weather them. First of all, I have to establish that what I do is not capital intensive at all. So I don't have to buy expensive stuff. People in renewable energy like Greenage, they have to buy solar panels, they have to buy inverters, they have to buy LED batteries, all that stuff. I just needed to pay for Google Docs. So that I had like an Excel sheet and Google form. But then one of the major issues was obviously operational costs, because you had to pay like salaries, you had to book flights, you had to do certain things that would do that. So because what I was doing had a direct tangent to what Genesis was doing, they were able to enable me at that point. And that's why I like to think of them as angel investors in the truest form of the word angel, where they're just there for the fun of it, okay? As opposed to, having and expecting an ROI. Because of that, I was able to like also do stuff. I remember I was a one-man staff. It was just me doing everything. So I didn't necessarily need a lot of funding externally. The thing about what I do is that there's a quick ROI, in the sense that if you outsource 5 people in a month, and you're handling their payroll, for instance, you get a percentage, say 17% of the annual gross as your contingency fee monthly, then you know that every month you're getting 17% of whatever you're paying. So you have your MRR fixed. So because of that, I was able to like bootstrap that. But speaking about this generically, investments, there's a founder winter currently where investors are not as forthcoming as before. Investors are moving into things like deep tech, clean tech, renewable tech, things outside the usual fintech or blockchain tech vertical. And you can't always say bootstrap, because there are certain things you can't just bootstrap around. So I think in scenarios like that, founders would ideally try to join incubators like Techstars, places where they can get mentorship and possibly investors to come and support what they are doing, and then they can grow ultimately. But for me, because I didn't have so much to foray in terms of like initial cost, it was a lot more easier for me. I had an advisory team, not a founding team. So I think the difference is that with the founding team, you can tell them, you go and do something, you go and do something. The advisory team tells you to go and do something. Anytime I was going to travel, my advisory team would call me and say, this trip you're going for, what are you hoping to achieve? What is your definition of success? So because of that, I could now extrapolate this and know that if I'm going for this meeting, I'm supposed to bring back 3 deals, for instance. So if I can't bring back 3 deals, I'd rather just stay wherever I went to. So that advice community around me was what was able to push me towards that point. My first big break was FX. I got introduced to the US consulate, interestingly, and it was just it was a chance meeting. They were in Enugu, they just Googled tech hubs around, and my name popped up, and they invited me for a roundtable at UNEC, the American corner. And interestingly, the roundtable was supposed to be about tech, but because not a lot of tech people came, we started talking about politics. P2B supposed to rule. I was with my driver. My driver is a staunch Biafran apologist, but because remember, I was just the only person that time, I introduced my driver as my colleague, as the head of admin in my department, and we got in for the meeting. Now, next thing, my guy starts talking about Biafra and Nnamdi Kanu. But the meeting was nice. I got invited for a follow-up meeting in Lagos. 2 weeks later, I was on a flight to Lagos. 2 months later, I was on a flight to the United States of America based off that meeting. And then that just expanded my horizon in the sense that I was now able to tap into the global market. And that's why if you check publilimited.com, you see that we cater to tier 1 and tier 2 countries with African talent. So that's now where we had to now rejig what we're doing, because we're no longer just doing stuff locally. We're now able to do stuff internationally, and then we're able to like partner with companies like Deal to like process payments in FX, so that our clients didn't have to worry, how do I pay? Pay credit card, you can pay with crypto, you can pay whatever, we'll process it. pay and regularize. So that, I think the US consulate coming in was what acted as a big break in terms of legitimacy too. So anytime businesses, like small businesses in the United States of America, were looking for talent, the US consulate would recommend me. Anytime I sent emails to any businesses in the US, I just had to copy the US consulate and they would say, oh, this is somebody that does business with us properly, and it works. And then they started inviting me for stuff. Even when they did their US Independence Day, they invited me, and it was an opportunity to also network and meet like a ton of people. I'm just incredibly awesome. In terms of like personal qualities, I think it's enthusiasm. I'm very excited. I have childlike excitement about starting new things, and that's what I start anything with, that excitement, because most times I don't even research properly. I don't even do like proper research. I just dive in with that excitement, and that excitement is able to like take me over the end, because ultimately if you don't do something you enjoy doing, it's going to fizzle away. But because I like talking to people, I like meeting people, it was able to like push me. So the excitement, and then obviously the intelligence, because you need to have conversations with potential partners. You need to interview people you want to outsource. You need to like screen some of these things. And if you're not brilliant in a multifaceted way, you're not able to have those conversations, because it's technical talent outsourcing. I used to write code before, but that was years ago. There's still product design, there's still Web3, there's still lots of stuff that I still have to outsource. And so having multifaceted knowledge, tech-wise, was able to also help me. Finally, is just having a very likable personality, because investors, colleagues, there's a time I was hiring for, I think InterSwitch actually, and InterSwitch had like a lower budget, and this person I wanted to hire, very smart guy, was telling me that, oh, he has to take a pay cut to get here, and he already had a job that was paying about like 200K more, and this was Lagos. And I had a conversation with him, explained to him what he was going to stand to gain, what he was going to lose, etc., etc. And that just gave him perspective. So now he's currently at InterSwitch and he's doing amazing. So, that likability and interest in people's welfare is why I would be able to call somebody as opposed to just checking the next person on the list, because I see that, oh, this person has something that the client would like. And I've had no issues because of that extra stuff. And, that personal thought that I get to put because I'm a likable person and because I also like interacting with people. So I think having all those together, it goes a long way, a longer way than even other stuff like technical know-how, etc., etc. We have to start by establishing the technical side. Whomever you're hiring has to know what they're doing. First of all, that's like the basic entry level. If they don't know what they're doing, that's a major problem. They have to know what they're doing because you're hiring them for a technical role. The other conversation also is around people that don't necessarily know what they're doing, but they are passionate about learning. So those are the two starting points I consider. Number one, you know what you're doing technically, or you don't even know what you're doing technically, but you're excited to learn, you're excited to grow. Number two is, if I delegate something to you, I don't have to follow up. It's a personal quirk for me because I might have undiagnosed ADHD. I do not know that yet, but I tend to forget things a lot. And I do not want to be following up with somebody and reminding them. I'd rather, if I told you something to do, you just came back to me with like feedback, this is done. Or a blocker, this has not been done because of this. Let me not come back in a week or two later because maybe the client has not reminded me. I'm like, Anointed, where's this at? And it's like a whole thing. So for me, the ability for people to delegate stuff to you and you do it without necessarily me needing to check in is a very, very major plus for me. And then the passion for wanting to do stuff. And then it just shows me that you're human. And I like humans. I like interacting with human beings. I like working with human beings. There's also the part of candor, because while I was working initially, I genuinely always wanted to say things as they were. So I would not appreciate someone that's sucking up to me. I know I'm very smart, but there are certain things that I might not have perspective over. So if I don't have someone who is candid enough with me, we can't pass critical mass. So I need someone that's candid. And the thing about candor is that there has to be respect in that, mutual respect. So I want you to be able to give me feedback, and I want you to be also able to take feedback. Interestingly, something I learned while I was at Genesis, passion for the work you do, candor in the way you talk to people and the things that you do, excellence. You see, excellence is important because my dad always talks about service delivery, but particularly service delivery in Nigeria, how people have this laissez-faire attitude towards doing stuff that it's not my father's business, and because of that, they don't do that well. If you could do stuff properly, everybody's going to be happy. Because even the Bible doesn't say shepherd, the Bible says good shepherd. So it means that from time immemorial, there has been like a recurring theme around excellence in service. So even in the things you do, if they ask you to arrange a table, and I want people to come and say, since I started coming to this office, this is the most arranged this table has been. So excellence in everything, in the way you think, in the way you function, in the way you do things. So you put all of that together, plus the technical know-how or the passion to learn. That's the winning formula for having a team. So it still takes me back to what I said initially, which is solutionism, which is getting a solution and looking for a problem, okay? So the way to think about tools is not, how do I implement this? Is, does my business need something? And then if your business needs something, what does it need? So the question continues to be, what is the need I have and what can solve it? Because ultimately, it's not always AI. So we go and hire a personal assistant. As techies generally, not even just founders, we need to keep asking ourselves, what do we need to improve? What needs to change? And constantly, consistently cater for that. So like when you're thinking back, it's always like, clearer. So I think what I would have done differently is more of an action-based thing. So it's more like I would have been more proactive in the past. I'd have been able to like see stuff, because there are a couple of deals that I wasn't proactive enough with, and they just went back. In fact, I sent an email to one of our German partners 2 years after we sent an initial contract because I just forgot to follow up. So if I was more proactive, some things like that would not slip through. I've had second chances to rekindle and to reignite, but when you're more proactive to stuff, it changes the narrative, it changes things that you do, and then you're able to do stuff a lot more better. So apart from more proactivity, I wouldn't change any other thing else because my life has been perfect up to this point. An advice I would give is solve the problem, okay? Tech founder, tech entrepreneurship is not just a title or a bubble to be worn, as a mark of something, because you can be a founder, you're not even getting paid your salary. You can be a founder and you're struggling and you're borrowing. You need to find an actual problem, but that does not end there. You also need to find a problem that has commercialization potential. Unless you're trying to be another Jesus, or you're already rich enough. It's not enough to just say, what problem am I solving? If I'm solving a problem, there can be a market. There are problems, especially like in Nigeria, where we have a lot of population, but very low purchasing power. So it's not even enough to say, oh, there's a problem I'm solving. Is there commercialization potential? For me, it shouldn't just be, oh, I want to be a founder, and that's it. It should be, I want to solve a problem and make money while solving this problem, and then the conversation happens. Also, think lean. We need to run businesses the lean way. You don't need to hire people just for the sake of it. You don't need to get celebrities and make them your brand ambassadors just for the sake of this. You need to also be lean, run it as a very lean business. And then I think most importantly, also stay abreast trends. One of the persons I respect the most is Mr. Chuksedoga. And it's interesting because he has done a lot for the tech ecosystem in Enugu, right? A lot of the things, in fact, back when I was still in college, I think I came into Enugu for a scholarship exam. And I was hearing about digital dreams as early as back in the day. Not only has he inspired people, he has stayed relevant. You walk into Digital Dreams or Dreams Hub and you see him on his computer. What is he doing? He's still writing code. I stopped writing code, me as a small boy. I stopped writing code since. But someone like him, he has decided to stay relevant so that he doesn't forget it. Do you understand? So for me, that kind of perspective, that kind of thinking is the type that gives longevity, because you're going to stay ahead of the curve, you're going to stay ahead of the game, and then you can demand from your employees, do this because why? I am also doing it. So apart from, the different things I've said, you need to stay relevant. Look around you. Look around you. Look at the things that other people are doing and learn from them. Look for mentors in the space. Look for people that have done it. Because trust me, if before I wanted to start something, I had the conversation with Mr. Chooks, maybe I would have done things differently. Maybe I wouldn't have done it at all. Do you understand? Maybe I would have considered separate things that I didn't consider initially. But the key thing is that it would have changed the perspective with which I approach things. So anybody that wants to start, a tech firm, entrepreneurship in tech, understand first of all that you must solve a problem. You must ensure that that problem is commercializable. Okay, you must look for mentors in the field, and you must stay relevant in what you do. And you see that ultimately, even if you're not going to succeed, you're going to fail very fast. Okay, which is very important too, because if you're going to fail fast. Don't stay 10 years before you fail, because that now brings about the sucking cost mentality. So fail and fail fast, or succeed and continue succeeding.